literature, Bengali and Assamese. I'm an Assamese myself. So when he told me this story, I thought, oh, he's going to cast me, in that role of Bengali. And I'm like, oh, really? That was again challenging for me and also fun, a lot of fun. And I think for any actor, she would vouch for it. And I'm sure that when you don't know how to play a role, then it becomes more interesting for me. So I'm grateful and honored that you have cast me, sir. Thank you very much. And we haven't met in the film. And so, thank you.
So after that casting course, you'll have to tell us a little bit about Mr. Paresh Rawal's role since he's not here. So you'll have to tell the audience a little bit about that.
I want to add to what Adil just said about anti-typecasting. Everyone expects Paresh to play the Gujarati and of course someone like Adil who knows the Bengali language so well. But it was amusing on the set to see the two of them helping each other with the language, So when he had to speak in Gujarati, Paresh actually told him it's this way. And when the Bengali words had to come in or when he had to say something, it was the other way around. So that was a camaraderie that was, absolutely memorable. So like, now that Paresh Rawal plays Tarini Khuro, the Bengali storyteller. A storyteller, not a story writer. And that is very vital, very vital clue in the film because why is he not writing his own stories? Because of a certain fear, because of a certain complex, because of the fear that he may be criticized and not acknowledged by the world. And that is what I think Ray is trying to tell all of us through this film. That do not in any way underestimate yourself. Do not in any way keep the doors open for external elements to come in and destroy what is rightfully yours. Do not be sort of, enveloped in a complex or an insecurity that could end up being, frightfully, disastrous later, and it might be too late to repair. So that is what I think what really attracted me towards this film. And when I went up to Mr. Paresh Rawal to tell him that I'm making this film, there was this childlike excitement. I mean, after all these years, and this was, I quote unquote, he said, after all these years, I've been given a part that I'm so excited about, that I so want to do, that he stood by me till the time we found our producers. Any other actor would probably have sort of gotten impatient and said, oh, is this man really making this film at all? Or is he just sort of, taking me on a ride? So I'm extremely grateful to the faith that Paresh had in this project as much as the producers had. And that is what came together finally to create this result that you just had a glimpse of. So Paresh, with all the complexities and the layering of his characters, the two of them would just get together, sit down and read. And it felt like a play rehearsal, when two actors would just read, say the lines, then find the underlining meaning in those words, and then not bring it up to an obvious point and just leave it at a point which is so subtle and understated that you might probably want to end up seeing the film a second time to actually decipher what those clues were and why this character spoke the way he or she did at that point of time. And that is the cleverness of what Mr. Ray has written. So, it really helped, and it actually helped in getting actors so excited that they all felt that, after a long time, a role that could sort of, push them to their limits. They've got a role of that kind. And of course, being in a Satyajit Ray film is a dream even which Mr. Amitabh Bachchan had.
It's very interesting that you touched upon what, some of the unique things, unique qualities that Mr. Satyajit Ray's storytelling kind of brings to the table, whether it's in the form of a short story or his movies. So when you're working on a film like this, what are the challenges creatively? And what are the what are the bits that you really enjoy as actors, as a director, to kind of create? Because we were speaking about this a little earlier, that the world that he created was not like hyper realistic. It was just human, it was gentle, it was real. It didn't have gimmicks, it didn't resort to, technical sort of daredevilry. It's purely on the story and the actors and the director as instruments of conveying that story as it unfolds in life. So, as creative people, would love to know what that process was like for each of you, the challenge of it, the joy of it, whatever it may have been. So anyone is free to jump in.
Well, I'd like to say that after doing 18 to 20 feature films, I thought this was the final test. And I felt as though I was doing my first film. And it really, really called for a lot of restraint, a lot of thought, and a lot of, what would one say, when you pay a tribute to a man like Satyajit Ray, it had better be at least average, if not good. So that challenge which came in, along with this entire script and the project, is something that kept me on tenterhooks. And I was very, very, very nervous making this film, fearing that I might, make one false step and destroy the image of Ray in the world. So that is the kind of challenge that this film pushed me onto.
Adil, Tanishta, anything that you guys would like to add in?
I think, as a Bengali, I would like to just talk a little bit about Satyajit Ray. And I had not read this particular series of stories before actually Anandji gave me, this story, and I didn't know about it. But having said that, there's always, outside of Bengal, I think in Bengal, many people know many of his stories and other sides of Satyajit Ray, apart from the very serious art house filmmaker that, he was. Right. But outside of Bengal, most people viewed him as this person who made very serious art house films about villages and poor people in India, and which is absolutely such a misconception, because he never made films about the poor. All his films are psychological. All his films are about the middle class or the upper middle class. One of his most celebrated films is Charulata. And even this particular story, it's a humorous take on storytelling. And it's kind of critiquing your own self as well as storytellers, as filmmakers. We all are different forms of storytellers, right? Like right from the childhood, my 6-year-old daughter also loves telling stories. We all are storytellers in many ways. And this whole oral tradition of India, which is celebrated so much in our culture is not a written culture. And that's what Anandji said, that he was not a story writer, the main protagonist of the film. So he picks up that whole idea of the basis of Indian folk culture, Indian epic culture, and tells a very humorous story about storytellers and stories, and how stories are passed on, how things change, and what is storytelling all about. So I think this film would also sort of transcend that cliched idea about Satyajit Ray, who's viewed as this very serious, heavy, sort of art house filmmaker. He wrote so many things about children, and a lot of, detective stories. A lot of his stuff is very mainstream, actually. So that's another thing that sort of, for me as an artist and as a Bengali, allured me towards this project, that, the world is also going to see, mainly also different parts of our own country will see this other side of this great Indian filmmaker and a storyteller.
You know, it's so talking before this discussion. I was just saying that, you know, it's Satyajit Ray has been also criticized within India for, like you said, presenting poverty in his films. Like some people feel or criticize him for only showcasing India's poverty, right? And as you rightly pointed out, that's not the case, you know. I mean, his repertoire
He's
of
never-
work is so impressive.
Yes.
And there are
I mean,
multiple points of view.
except for Pathir Panchali, there's not a single film of Satyajit Ray which is not about the elite, the zamindars or the middle class. And Pathir Panchali is not a film about poverty. It is it's a film about poetry actually. It is a poetic film about human
beautifully-
emotions and sentiments and family and migration and so many other things.
It's actually, to me, it's a tragedy. The whole Apu trilogy is human tragedy at its, you know, like, probably, I
It's
wouldn't
about
say
so
worst,
many things.
but
It's not about poverty, you know. So the thing is that's people who probably haven't seen his films and do not understand the psychological complexities that his films actually deal with. Yeah.
Right. Adil, what's your point of view on, you know, the movie, and what did the storyteller sort of course, you enjoyed the process, but anything unique about this cinematic process?
Well, I generally keep myself in my department. See, she is already a film director. There is an actor-director, actor-director. I am very
Pure actor.
limited, you know, limited understanding of filmmaking. I try to, not try, I mean, even if I try, I cannot, so I don't venture into encroaching the other departments. So when I read a script, and it has changed over the years how I approach a role. I used to be a fanatic method actor, and I traumatized my friends and my lovers and my mother and everybody because it became torturous for them to bear me around them. So I slowly found another way of approaching a role, and what I do is I know for a fact that a director is putting me in a context, and that's half the job done for me, because she or he knows, okay, this person is coming and carrying the part of the story, and I am a component of that particular part of the story. And if I can just simply make sense of the words that had been written so carefully, that too inspired by writing of Satyajit Ray. And so I generally read the script several times, and I do not think, or I do not even, so I follow my teacher's advice. He says that all your brilliant ideas, go to the toilet, flush it into the toilet, don't act upon that. So I have been following that religiously. All my brilliant ideas which come when I read the Roy, aise karunga, waise karunga, flana karunga, I do not entertain them. I sleep on it and again following my teacher, I have Indianized that particular terminology. It's called Subconscious by Stanislavski. I think he wanted to be very secular. I call it the goddess of creativity. I let her take over me. And following the direction of the director at that point of time, exactly what I feel, and I try to just become the instrument to say the line. Right. And the depth and the layer, which probably according to my understanding as of now, comes from when you are not bringing in your intellectual mind to interpret it. It is the inner being which is way more complex than any intellectual person can ever understand how this complex organism functions. So I try to do that, but it's a difficult one. Not to think about what you're going to do tomorrow is the most, according to me, I find it very difficult not to think about it, how to do it. So, and absolutely trust the director. And if he says, good, I'm good. What I enjoy in the process is that I'm trying to be here and now. And that is magic for me. The time stands still for me, and I don't age.
Fantastic. That's, I mean, you know, it's such an insight words and just
I
responding
mean,
to
somehow,
what
I
that
think
emotion should be.
Yeah, I think somehow with practice now, the right words still come. Even if I read it just once, unless there's a dialect involved, where then I have to really learn. But as long as it's Hindi and English, I don't need to memorize. If I read it 1 or 2 times, I know the lines somehow. With years of practice, that's come theater and everything. So I read my co-actors' lines. So,
So you know how to react to it.
no, I don't know how to react. And not react, respond. I just listen to my co-actor then,
Okay.
you know. And I just listen to what he's saying and how is he saying it, his emotion at that point of time. So my response is just to what he's saying or what she's saying.
Right.
And I think that instinctive thing, I don't know like how it happened, but it takes, I think, years of practice to just not prepare. It takes everyday practice to not prepare for that particular moment and that particular role, to
now,
keep it real, yeah.
A new book must happen, how an actor does not prepare. But, you know, dropping the...
Yeah, after, I mean, I think many, like, yeah, you don't prepare for that particular moment.
Right. Mr. Mahadevan, I want to ask you this question that, you know, the storyteller, obviously at one level, just as you say the name, it sounds like a perfect sort of tribute to Satyajit Ray because he was the master storyteller. But did you ever think of any other story from his repertoire to create or recreate even his movies? Like, you know, nowadays everybody does a remake and an adaptation and all of that. Did you toy with the idea of any other story in his repertoire that you would like have considered making into a film other than the storyteller itself? Or was this the one and only choice?
Well, remakes are out of the question for me. They're not part of my life at all, and I'll never do a remake.
Okay.
As far as adapting his original story is concerned, the reason why I selected this was he's done a series of stories on Tarini Khuro, and almost all of them have a certain supernatural, paranormal element in them. Only this particular story, Golpo Bole Tarini Khuro, is absolutely rational. It's realistic. And it's brutally realistic and very humorously realistic. So that's the reason I selected this story. It wasn't difficult for me to do the selection. Another interesting aspect was that nobody could really make this film in Bengali, even if they wanted to. Because the main character, the protagonist, Tarini Khuro, is a Bengali and he doesn't understand any other language. The antagonist, played by Adil, is a Gujarati. He does not understand Bengali. So the only language in which they could communicate was Hindi. So, you know, as much as I wanted to make a Bengali film as a tribute to the great Ray, I had to make this in Hindi.
So Adil, I believe you didn't know that you were the antagonist.
I don't remember playing an antagonist, but in a subtle way, yes, of course.
Well, I think everyone is his or her own antagonist because somewhere...
Now he's intellectualizing it, Dekho.
Somewhere we are all working against ourselves without our own knowledge. And that is what affects Tarini Khuro the most. That is he what he thinks or is he what he does not think? So I think somewhere, I mean, maybe I used it wrongly for Adil Hussain's character, but there is no protagonist in any of us. We're all antagonists.
For the parts that they're playing in the film.
No,
They're both terrific actors, so there's that is a given.
all right,
but-
I'll leave the comfort zones aside because I know all of them and they're friends and we work together, but that's not the point at all. I am very, very, very particular and fastidious about my casting. The casting has to be correct. Once Rishikesh Mukherjee made a film called Anuradha. It had the great Balraj Sahni and Leela Naidu. And Rishida told me that all the distributors got together and told him, what kind of casting is this? This is no hero or heroine, you know. And he persisted with Balraj Saab and Leela Naidu ji. And of course, the film won the President's Gold Medal, the national award, it was called in those days. And it's a classic. And he told me one line, Anant, always cast correctly. And that word has stuck to me. So when I chose my characters, I had to put those characters against these faces and against these actors, against these performers, and see very, very, very carefully. I mean, it's the way Ray would have cast. I mean, Ray did repeat a lot of his favorite actors. That doesn't mean that he repeated them just because he knew them or he had worked with them. It's because they fitted the role very correctly. And so that was what it was, correct casting. Right up to Jayesh More, who plays Adil Hussain's Man Friday in the film. I mean, we picked him up from a film, a National Award-winning film called Hellaro. He played the main lead in that film. And I went up to him and asked him whether he would do a supporting role in this film because I felt he was right for the part. And he was so happy to be part of this. So that's the entire casting process that happened. And I'm glad that it fell into place so correctly. So today when we watch the film, I feel that nobody else could have fitted these parts.
Terrific. So, any questions from the audience? Because it's a very interesting film and you have the cast and the director right here.